happiness, I would remind you, be very careful for what you ask for. You might be disappointed in what you get. Many people seem, at least, to try to find happiness just by staying so busy that they don't have to look at themselves or at life. They just don't want to face life in its negative aspects. Recreation, drugs, sex, on and on. There's so many people that are like that. They just try to stay so busy that they don't have to face anything that might make them unhappy. I guess we could go off on a little tangent and talk about the difference between pain and suffering. There's going to be pain. I don't think there's any question about that. Suffering being how you deal with that pain, how you attach to it mentally and suffer when it may not be necessary. Or we could reverse the whole approach. Instead of saying what happiness is, we could turn around and say, well, what's it not? Well, you got all these same considerations on what it's not. So I'm not going to go there with it. Eliminating unnecessary desire would be a good one. What about both? Can you be happy and unhappy at the same time? I think most of us here have experienced in our lives when we think we've got most of what we want and we seem to be pretty happy, but yet there's this deep angst. Something's wrong with this world. Something's wrong with my life. So is that being happy and unhappy at the same time? Another of my favorite things I ran into in preparing for this was Robert Wright's book called Why Buddhism is True. Mm-hmm. If you haven't read that book, I would highly, highly recommend it. Dr. Wright was a professor studying about Buddhism, and he got caught up in it and turned into a good Buddhist. And he wrote this book then, Why Buddhism's True. One of the basic things in this book was the modular concept of the mind. And different theoreticians have different ones. Some say there are 5 modules. Dr. Wright even apologized for using the word module. He said he couldn't find anything better than that word. But anyway, there were either 5 or 7 or 11, depending on who's working on the theory. And at each of these modules is competing for dominance in your life. I guess you could go back and relate this to the hierarchy of needs. It's an old theory that was used years ago, particularly in the management world, that your lowest level needs, the most basic needs, survival, reproduction, safety. And the next level up is social needs. And then these needs are in a hierarchical order. And the most basic unmet need is the one that's going to dominate your motivation. Sort of the same thing with these modules. Again, we could say, if one module's happy, can the other one be unhappy? Or are there variances between them? Can we have multiple happinesses at the same time? Also, what's it say about our concept of non-self again? We don't have this one self, and this is one of the things that Dr. Wright concluded. Well, this sort of agrees with the Buddhist concept there not being a separate permanent self. We got all these modules that come and go. Finally, in the first section here, why do we really, or do we really want to eliminate all the suffering in our life? What about the suffering you do for others that leads to sympathy and compassion on your own part? There's very little progress made in life without conflict, without some pain that leads to suffering. So if that progress is good, perhaps the suffering is something you just have to live with. I'll stop at this point and see if there's any questions or observations about what is happiness.
Again, folks, if you have questions, oh yes, I see Gyozan, Larry LeDuc, please come off of mute for your question.
Hey there. I apologize for my slowness here with this Zoom technology. I'm just getting used to it. Appreciate your observations, your reflections, because you I thought so well kind of summarized the nature of conditioning, the nested doll quality of the self in a sense, and the wobbly wheel of samsara. Interestingly, it occurs to me that happiness being a condition is really the definition of suffering, because no conditions last. Conditionally, we can say, well, when all this crap clears and I finally arrive at wherever I'm going, that, then I'll be happy. Or, when I can rid myself of this problem, or, and get to this new ground, and then I'll get it. And this goes for probably our Buddhist path in terms of seeking enlightenment, something, seeking freedom. What is it that we're seeking? And, what are we trying to get rid of? Are we trying to get rid of some condition? So it just brings up all sorts of really interesting questions for me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gyozan.
Comment or question here too. Would you speak a little bit about your thoughts about happiness and contentment? Contentedness.
That was one of the words used in the definition that I looked up, of those 27 words. To me, it's such a personal, individual, changing thing that it's almost impossible to talk about other than how I feel about it. I certainly can't tell you what makes you happy. What makes me happy? That's a good, honest question. A good night's sleep, a nice nap in the afternoon, if you want to get real basic about it. My time on the mat meditating, I guess, is one of my favorite things in life. Simple things in life. I walk my dog, I play with my cat, trying to not live in the past and remembering all the negative stuff that's happened, or not trying to, well, at my age, you don't try to look too far forward to the future anyway. Having made peace with those close to you, particularly your spouse, if you have one of those things, takes a long time, I think, to make peace. And that's a benefit of being around a while. Is that okay? Oh, it's perfect.
I'd like to follow on what Kusatsu said and have you actually talk a little bit more about the difference between happiness and contentment, in the sense that, we kind of settle for things as they are, because to change them is going to require a lot of effort, right? And a lot of status quo is, I think, what psychiatry and psychology say, that we're all trying to maintain status quo. So we have to think about it and trade off whether, well, not quite, satisfied. It's the meaning of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. I'm not quite satisfied. But am I willing to make the effort, to get beyond contentment with what I have, as inadequate, woefully inadequate as it may be, to go for something further, which I think will be more happiness. I would be happier if.
Yeah, I think most of us are a little afraid of change. Once we get our routine in life, and to change is sort of threatening. And change can certainly cause pain and suffering if you aren't careful. Okay. Last chance on part one. Uh-oh.
Kushin.
Cushing, how are you? Nice to see you.
Great to see you, Ungan. Very, very nice. I just wanted to make a point that listening to you describing the different potential realities of happiness, what came to me in listening to your most recent, what happens for you to make you happy now, what came to me was this sense of making authentic connections, stripping off our veneers, reducing to simplicity, and something authentic to us, whether it's, connecting to your landscape, connecting to the ocean, connecting to a person or a pet. So I just am interested in your thoughts there, and maybe we'll see more of this notion as you continue your talk. Gasho.
Thank you. That's a great observation. Keep it simple. Life is complicated enough without getting so involved in all the extraneous things that you have no control over. If you can just live, at least sometimes, in the present with the simple things of life, walking down on the beach, we're us lucky enough to live near the beach, or in the mountains hiking, or walking your dog, and those simple things of life are just as real, and to me more satisfying, at least at this stage of my life, than getting involved in any of the other stuff. So thank you for your looking for authentic behavior.
Again, we have a question from Michael. Michael, please come off of mute.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, Ungan. Good to see you.
He's another one of our Jacksonville guys.
Yeah.
So,
So I was listening to your to what you said before about something about the 5 modules of mind and how they're competing with each other. And the idea that came to my head when you said that was having different areas of life that are competing with each other, like physical fitness, or like that term a lot of people hear floating around, like work-life balance, for example. And the thought that I got was that for a lot of people, a key to happiness for them would be bring those areas of life into balance, so you're not investing too much into one area. And I was wondering your thoughts on that.
everybody, I'm deaf in one ear and have a hearing aid over here. And for some reason, Michael, I wasn't catching much of what you said. What did he say?
He was like saying work-life balance, the 5 modules. So what are your thoughts on, like, with the balancing everything, related to happiness? So what are your thoughts on how is it a balance? Is it not a balance? Or,
Read the book, Michael. Yeah, it's a balancing act. I think we go through it every day. Almost every moment is, what am I going to do now? What's my next And as you don't have to consciously think about these things, but in your mind, it's going around, well, what do I do? How do I handle this situation? Or yeah, it's not volume that bothers me. But yeah, it's a great book. And like I say, the 5 was the lowest number. They had, I think one theorist had like 21 modules. Just how complicated can the brain be? So I hope that addresses your question, and I apologize for my hearing impediments here.
We'll make it work.
Okay, is that okay, Michael? You got any follow-up?
Oh no, thank you so much for your answer. What was the book called again, actually?
The book is called Why Buddhism is True by Robert Wright. He was a sociologist, I've forgotten, at Yale or somewhere up there, and was doing a study, and he went up to the Insight Meditation Center to practice, or really to study all the nuts up there, meditating. And he got converted to Buddhism. Unfortunately, it was not Soto Zen, but it was still, very, very, very understandable, easy read also. I think it's a great book.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there no more questions about? No, well, I can't get by Hatsugi there. Hi, Brett.
Good morning, Ungan. Thank you as always for your talk. I wanted to ask you about the idea of the approach of, rather than the attempts to eliminate unhappiness and suffering, but rather to integrate them as inevitable. Meaning, and this sort of ties into what I sometimes wonder what we mean by enlightenment. We also refer to it as just being awake, right? And sometimes I wonder, if you really zoom out on the ever-changing flow of conditions and happiness and unhappiness, if it were not for that flow, it kind of seems as if we would go to sleep, rather, if we did find that constant state of happiness that we seem to strive for all the time. If we did actually get there, of a constant unending state of happiness, would that sort of be like a state of sleep? And looking at it that way, just the ever-changing flow of happiness and unhappiness and suffering, it still hurts, it's still unpleasant, but I think one thing we could do is zoom out far enough to sort of realize, well, in a sense, that's actually helping to keep us awake. So I just wanted your thoughts on that.
I agree. If there was no unhappiness, there would not be happiness. They're the other sides of the coin, and you can't have one without the other. I mean, if you had no unhappiness, there would be nothing to be happy about. So you'd just be neutered, a neutral in the middle. I'll jump forward a few lines in my presentation here. Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous one-liner of Buddhism, says, "The art of happiness is also the art of suffering well." We are going to have pain in life, there's no question. Okay, let's see what I dug up about Buddhism on happiness. As you were talking about, Hatsuki, waking up, seeing the world as it really is, seeing the truth of dukkha, impermanence, non-self, and our delusive natures. Why do we do this? In order to achieve a reduction in attachments and thereby reduce this stress, strife, and suffering. That would be a good definition, I think, of being happier from that point of view. This also leads to developing mindfulness and compassion for all beings. And that in turn is a byproduct of that whole process is happiness, I believe. Most Buddhists, or a lot of Buddhists anyway, I can't really speak for other people, see happiness as just another emotion, just like all your other emotions. And it's like when we're meditating, we're taught to watch your emotions rise and go away, watch your thoughts come and go, watch your physical sensations come, watch your happiness come and go. It's just another emotion. It's impermanent. It's going to change. The Metta Sutra. Supposedly this is one of the Buddha's favorite ones. I've been reading recently some stuff on Tibetan Buddhism, and one of the books said that this was one of Buddha's favorite things to meditate on while he was meditating. I'd always heard it was he meditated on his breath and on his body parts. But we can add now the Metta Sutra. May all beings be happy. May they be joyous and live in safety. All living beings, whether weak or strong. Let one not be submerged by things of the world. That's some excerpts that we use in Jacksonville at the beginning of all our meetings, is that little 4 lines about may all beings be happy from the Metta Sutra. The Buddha spoke of 3 levels of happiness: sense pleasures, enjoyable but fleeting; mental pleasures, like meditative states, again, temporary; the highest level of happiness coming from wisdom and awakening. So if we can trust the Buddha's words, that's a pretty good short definition. In the Mahamangala Sutra, or the Discourse on Happiness, it says, to live in the world with your heart undisturbed by the world, with all sorrows ended, dwelling in peace. This is the greatest happiness. To me, that seems just a little bit overstated. I don't think we're ever going to end all sorrows and have a heart that's completely undisturbed by the world. As long as we're human, we're going to have some things that disturb us. But it's certainly a great ultimate goal to talk about. And here's where I had my Thich Nhat Hanh thing for you. It says, the art of happiness is also the art of suffering well. I think it's great to enjoy short-term happiness events. I try to be a happy person, and and that's great. But you need to keep that kind of stuff in perspective. The short-term happiness, temporary, just like everything else. They'll come and they will go. That's the important thing, is the perspective, the impermanence and constantly changing nature of happiness and unhappiness. But for sure, don't get overly attached to the short-term happiness stuff, and then get very disappointed when you discover that they really are impermanent. You learn that the hard way through personal experience. So have fun, but don't count on it being there all the time. We need to work toward long-term happiness through awakening to the true nature of life. This is done through studying the true nature of impermanence, dukkha, non-self, and our delusive natures, and then sitting in zazen and letting those truths sink deeply into your mind or body at a deep intuitive level. And I know I'm repeating myself about dukkha, non-self, impermanence, and but I think it deserves repeating. A byproduct of this process of considering the truths and then meditating and dropping everything, just letting them sink in, don't think about them. A byproduct of that's awakening. As you sit and you see your thoughts come and go and your emotions rise and fall, and you become mindful of what's happening to you. And hopefully you can translate that mindfulness out into your everyday life. Thus endeth the second part of my presentation. So does anyone have anything to add about, I see Hojo ready to chime in? No, I thought you were ready to chime in here on the Buddhist view on happiness.
We all know it's a warm gun.
Sir,
We all know it's a warm gun.
I didn't understand that either.
Happiness, the warm gun,
It's a song.
the Beatles.
Chicago.
No, he's doing a Beatles song. You can't get away from that rock and roll. I like Janis Joplin better.
Me too.
Happiness is just another way of saying nothing left to lose.
Ungan, we have a question in the Zendo from Chicago.
Oh, we got this guy behind us that wants to talk.
Well, what is it line, get thee behind me? But anyway, I said there's a line, get thee behind me.
Okay,
Of all the facets of the conditioned state called happiness, could you offer observations on equanimity?
Equanimity.
Equanimity.
I have to learn how to spell that before I try to define it. My understanding of the concept of equanimity is more like balance, not being overly upset or not too elated about life, to be equanimous. Yeah, I think you can overdo that though. Sometimes life calls for strong emotions, strong commitments. You just can't be on a level plane all the time. As much as that sounds good, you stay out of trouble that way, but sometimes you need to be forceful. Sometimes you need to get angry. You need to get over it and sit in the right perspective, but sometimes you need to take strong action, not just be on some kind of even keel in your life. Even though that's the best way I think to live most of your life is, because most of our lives, most of my life anyway, is relatively meaningless. So you might as well be on an even keel and not get too upset. But when things do occur, don't be afraid to stand up and be counted. Buddhist take on how we doing on time? Oh, we've
Doing
got
great,
plenty
yeah.
of time. Any more questions? Ed, surely you've got one. No?
Larry?
Yeah, I was just going to respond to that comment about equanimity. Chicago had asked about. I don't think your comment, it doesn't seem that it negates anything, because isn't the balance, we're not talking about personal balance so much, although that's part of it, but isn't it true that it's an appropriate balance between the various causes and conditions? In other words, a response that's in proportion to whatever is occurring. So that equanimity, that balance is proportionate, and there's an inherent balance within that. So it seems to me that what you're saying is really true, that sometimes it does call for, conditions may call for a more aggressive sort of response.
Thank you. I like your definition much better than mine. My initial reaction was to ask him to define what he meant instead of me trying to define it. But I think you're exactly right. That balance point can move and change with the situation. Thank you.
Sensei, one thing too, that come up for me when Gyozan, I'm sorry, Larry, I don't want to mispronounce your name, but, and also Shikak is exertion and effort. Exertion and effort is required at, because sometimes we don't want to sit, sometimes we have to exert ourselves to be able to show up.
Yep.
So that's what arose for me when you were speaking about what is required. Sometimes is more so a stronger effort or stronger, I don't want to say reaction, but a stronger action. But I appreciate both of your comments for that, but that's what arose for me. Do you have any other comments on that?
No, I think you're exactly right. And it could be a reaction or an action. I mean, that both are real.
Again, folks, if you have any questions, and this is for the folks on Facebook too, Kushin is online on Facebook too, so she is not on here, but I want to let you know she is also on Facebook Live. You can't see her, but she's there. Anyone else, any questions? Awesome, I think we're good, Ungan. Let's proceed to part 3.
Moving right along, the secrets of successful living. Just write your checks out and send them to this address, and I will send you all the answers you need. This is my list. It's certainly not all inclusive. Number 1, learn to meditate. All the preaching, all the reading of the books, all the listening to some guy like me talk here, it's interesting and fun, hopefully. But if you really want to make a difference in your life about anything almost, I think contemplating those truths, and I'm talking about important things now, not who's going to win the ball game next week, but contemplating them deeply and then just sitting in meditation and letting everything drop. And whatever it is that you've been contemplating, I think sinks in over time. You may not even realize this is happening, but over time, just through the process of silent meditation, trying to see who you are or not, that these things occur. Part of learning to meditate, find a teacher if you don't have one. Join a Sangha if you don't have one. Just remember that all things are impermanent and constantly changing, having no ultimate essence, and that all the stuff that we perceive is being perceived through a delusive mind, your mind or mine. And as I mentioned before, this whole process leads to mindfulness as a byproduct of the process. It's not the purpose of the process of meditation to be mindful, but that does naturally occur. Hi, Ed. Hi. Number 2 on my list, don't be overly attached to things of this world. Do not be submerged. In the Metta Sutra, the last line of that selection was, do not be submerged by things of the world. Outcomes are so unpredictable in life that you should be more concerned about your effort and the path than about the outcome or the goal. Here's one of my favorite lines. I think it's an original by Ungan Bill. trying to make permanent in life those things that by their very nature are impermanent will lead to suffering, not happiness. We talk about attachments. We can also look at it from the negative side of being attached to things. Don't be overly attached to the negative things that have happened to you in your life, bad experiences. Learn how to forgive. It sounds like a preacher on Sunday morning now. I hope I don't sound that way, but again, this gets back to meditation. Hearing me say that, excuse me. Hearing me say that, or reading a book, or listening to Hojo, again, that's good and positive and fun, but you need to sit and meditate on this whole idea of the impermanence of life. Number 3, try not to desire more than you need. Trying to accumulate more and more for the sake of having more and more will lead to suffering, not happiness. You can never get enough. And besides, someone else will always have more if that's your concern. Particularly, you can get so busy in this accumulation process that you don't have enough time left for your spiritual life. And this is the real problem. So many people, and I can speak personally for the first part of my life, I was so busy accumulating, trying to get there, get a step up on this guy, or be successful, or have this kind of assets or light. There's just got to be a limit somewhere. I don't know how you set that limit, but I think that to be truly happy, you have to get that in perspective. Number 4 on my list, try not to take sides. Evaluate whatever is under consideration based upon the facts as best you understand them. But once you take sides, a whole second layer of confusion enters the picture. It becomes my side versus your side, my religion versus your religion, my political candidate versus your political candidate, my way of doing this versus your, my football team against your football team. There's no end to it. And it's very, very, very hard to do. This is another one of those things where it's easy to preach and say, don't do this now. But contemplate that and sit quietly and let it sink in. Try to take the middle path and act independently. If you say it's my side against your side, then it's sort of like the facts don't make a lot of difference anymore. If my religion says do it this way, then it's got to be done that way. And if your religion says other way, and when in fact there might be some good points on both sides of this. So try not to take sides. And my final sentence in the presentation is, I'll repeat myself again, this intellectualist approach to happiness or problem solving or anything else is wonderful, necessary. We're human beings and we have brains and we need to think about things. But that's not really enough to, in most cases, to actually change behavior. It takes the whole process of meditation. I was brought up in a very conservative, right-wing, Southern Presbyterian home. And I assure you, if preaching could change people, I would have been a lot better person a lot long ago. And I'll say nothing else negative about my Presbyterian friends. Thank you all. Questions, answers, observations? Dr. Connor, I'm disappointed you haven't jumped into this fray.
I haven't felt the need to. You're doing
Ed was the guy that won Hojo's picture year before last in the raffle we had. He's a retired professor, and he's opened his house to us. He just built a beautiful new house down in the Springfield area of Jacksonville. He's opened his house to us to actually sit when the church had a conflict and we couldn't get in there. Nice to see you, Ed.
And again, folks, please do not be shy. It's a gift that we have Ungan here. So Jacksonville, thank you for allowing us to borrow him for a month. So we're getting our good use, but it's always a pleasure when we have people here in Ango. And it's always a pleasure to see the faces of our extended Sangha. So Jacksonville, thank you so much and welcome. We look forward to being able to continue to practice with you. So welcome, and we're excited to have Ungan. So thank you for letting us borrow him for a bit.
Hi, Candace. You going to show your face, or are you hiding from us today? Oh, there she is. Yay!
And again, folks, either on Zoom, in the Zendo, or on Facebook, please, if you have questions, just let me know. Comments as well.
I have an observation. I happen to be reading right now a book called The Science of Happiness by a European named Klein. And I've been very surprised and very interested and very pleased to hear that actually what you have said has echoed frequently what this scientist has said about scientific findings regarding what happiness is and how to achieve it and so forth. That makes me happy because I've long believed that science is a kind of model of the way to truth. And yet, of course, we who practice Zen think that we also have our own model of how to get to truth, if there is such a thing. And they coincide very often, more often than any two great disciplines or ways of getting to the truth that I know of. And so I was very happy to hear what you said. One thing that might be added that this book provides to what you said regarding try not to desire more than you need, which is wonderful, wonderful advice, I think, especially because you and I are the same age, and I think that becomes more true, or about the same age, and that becomes more true the older you get, I think. But it helps, of course, to know or have some good sense of what you need. And of course, that's another one of the great benefits of doing Zazen. Everything in the world goes through your mind when you're sitting on that cushion. And among the things that go through your mind that you can at least observe, which is the whole point, seems to me, of sitting, observing. It's an exercise in pure consciousness. But just observe the needs that pop up in your mind. You know, you get to know yourself in every sense when you do Zazen. And in order to know and not exceed in your desires, or what it is that you need to know what you need.
Thank you, Ed. You have made me very happy. I would like to add to that that certainly one should never use this idea of not getting more than I need as an excuse for not trying. You know, you need to get enough. You need to get enough so the other people won't be dependent on you. You need to get enough so you got a little excess so you can make donations to your Sangha. You know, you need enough and need a little more than enough. So don't use that for an excuse for not finishing your education or working hard or whatever. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I did want to make one comment. Oryoki, the monastic style of eating, which I'm told came from the emperor of Japan, the way they eat, the royal family would eat, very simple. Oryoki has a connotation of just enough, just enough.
Brett, do you know what oryoki is? It's a very formalized, detailed way to eat.
Basically 3 bowls, mama bear, papa bear, baby bear bowls that nest in each other. And you take them out and you control your portions. You know,
It's like,
they're very small compared to one of our dinner plates.
like the tea ceremony of food.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Kushin.
Kushin.
Okay, thank you. Again, Ungan-san, very nice. Your list is a rich list of what makes happiness real. And whenever I think of the middle way, which I think is a profound practice indeed, you know, what reminds me is, you know, if we walk forward from our heart's view, in our heart space, I think it gives us an opportunity to see things as they truly are, both inside ourselves and that which confronts us. And I think that tends to reduce the potential for suffering rather than increase it. Perhaps you might have something to comment on that.
I agree. I don't know what else to say. Thank you, Jim. Cushing.
Your evening is up.
Yes, Green. Thank you for joining.
Yep. So I'll just make a comment in terms of happiness. So I actually dropped off the call earlier and unfortunately missed most of the talk on happiness. But my happiness was getting a call from my son who wanted to talk about happiness. My son lives in Japan right now. He's 19. And be able to have a dharma discussion with him about morality, ethics from the standpoint that we look at it within our flavor of Zen, and realize that the Dharma study and the book group that we've been doing on Tuesday has been enormously helpful, both in clarifying my understanding and being able to compare and contrast the for him how we view ethic to how we view happiness as compared to how society and how the religious, tradition that he was raised in. So I just wanted to say that was my happiness, and thank you for the Sangha's teaching. And I apologize for missing the talk on happiness. So, but I wanted to share that.
Well, thank you very much. Show you what a small world it is. My son lives in Tokyo. Of course, my son's 54 years old. But he texted me recently. He's retired military. He texted me recently and said that he was not too happy with his life and wanted some recommendations about how to get involved in this Zen stuff. I've been working on him for years. So I gave him a couple of pointers, and we'll see what happens.
That reminds me of one of the sayings about Buddha's order is, I think the reason he was so successful or effective is his monks and nuns, all of his followers were known to be so happy. They were all like hysterically happy. Everybody wondered why. Nobody, imagine India 2,500 years ago, and you have these people running around, probably laughing and smiling and having a good time. Everybody else is wondering what the hell is going on. What are you on?
Yeah, I was going. That sounds like San Francisco in 1960.
Again, folks, I know we have 5 minutes. We have a chance for one more question or comment before we ask for Ungans to give his final comments for us.
Scott, I see you're online.
Yep.
I don't think
And
we've heard from you.
Yeah, Corolla has her
Corolla's
hand up.
Hand.
Yep.
Oh, that's a hand.
Corolla, you there?
Adrian.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, it was a hand, not a finger.
Thank goodness.
How unusual.
I think that the idea of keeping happiness as a goal or something to be attained is one of the major sources of suffering. Because the goalposts are continuously moving and we get stuck in this, if only X, then I'd be happy, and you get X, and then you need Y, and then you need Z. So my advice is, when you're happy, be happy. When those around you are happy, be happy for them. When you're unhappy, be unhappy. Be where you are, where you are. That's my thought for the day.
That is well said, Corolla. Thank you very much. I agree.
Here's that one in the two side.
Yes. All right. Again. All right. So again, we'll take that. Ungan, thank you so much for your teaching today. Your gift, your Sangha is a gift, and we are so grateful to have you in our presence physically. So we are excited to be able to see what other goodness we can get while you're here. So
Oh, my goodness.
a big gasho for Ungan, everyone.
Thank you all. We are Jacksonville. We have our service on Monday nights at 7 o'clock. So if anybody would ever like to tune in to Zoom in with us on Monday nights, you're more than welcome. It's just been a real pleasure being up here and being. How many years is this now? 5 years. Time passes so quickly. But I just love the group and love to be here with you. Thank you.
Yep. And Hojo Sensei, before I go into announcements, did you want to say any few words or anything?
I never say a few words. So I think I'll just pass.
Okay. That being said, Asanga, as always, we're so grateful for your presence, your practice, and your showing your effort to just be here and to continue to be a part of our Sangha and our Sangha at large. That being said, in order for us to continue to provide these services and to support our teachers, we always ask that you by your generosity, value given, value received. If you haven't already, for those that are already our contributors, we thank you so very much. But if you haven't done that, we ask that you consider becoming a contributor so we can keep things going. Shikak.
I'd like to offer that you can contribute to your own happiness by giving some to us. As treasurer, I speak.
Yes, right. We always have to make room for our treasurer.
I thought he was a televangelist for a moment.
Reach deep into your pockets.
That being said, as a representation of the programs and the propagation of Zen, we have a conference retreat coming up in May. So please check out that opportunities. We have several speakers and Dharma talks, and an opportunity for the Sangha and the Sangha at large to be able to participate. And also, again, what we do best, sit for an extended period of time to work on getting to know yourself, and again, letting that go too. We have,
I
ahead, Sensei.
understand from the board that we may be doing soft opening around May.
We
for
will
people who are
be talking,
vaccinated and-
we'll be talking about that at our next board meeting, and more to come on that, folks. So just keep an eye out for that, the details.
June.
All right.
Oh,
So-
June, maybe June.
Yes, sir.
And again, as always, we have program with our sister Sangha, Rayaku Fusatsu. Tomorrow we have book club and a wide range of activities and sitting opportunities coming up. We also have Dogen Zazenkai coming up with our Mission Mountain Zen Center. And as always, Sensei, Kojo Sensei's book has been released, and we will be actually studying that. Is it in May or June with our book club?
Wichita has already started. I think it's going to be the Tuesday night book starting in June, if I'm correct on that date.
But the details are on stoorder.org so do not forget to use your resources. And I think that's it. Without
If
further
you
ado,
read it, please write a review.
yes.
They say, the publisher says the tipping point is about 35 reviews. At last glance, it had about, I think we had maybe 10.
So getting there. So at no further ado, we'll do our closing Dharma verses. Suki will lead us with the bells. But again, everyone, thank you so much for your presence.
Beings are numberless. I bow to them. Illusions are inexhaustible. I vow to rid them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to realize the Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.
Gasho, everyone have a good, safe week. Thanks so much for everyone's attendance. Be well.
Bye, Brett. Brett's our communications director there.
Oh, so Brett,
Thank
we'll
you,
be
Bill.
getting in contact.
Thank you, Candy. Brett, hold on a minute. Oh, he ran.
No, he's there.
Oh, there he is. I thought I'd introduce you formally to